The space station called Nexus 7 was always busy. Ships came and went every hour. Thousands of aliens walked through its metal hallways, buying and selling things from across the galaxy. The air smelled like engine fuel and strange foods. Lights flickered in every color. Voices spoke in hundreds of languages. In the lower market district, where the poor and desperate lived, a young dragon girl sat against a wall. Her name was. She was 17 cycles old, which made her still a child by her people's standards. Her scales, which should have been bright blue and purple, were now dull, and her wings hung limp against her thin back. Her eyes, once bright amber like fire, were clouded and tired. She had not eaten in 12 days. Belonged to a species called the. Long ago her people lived on a beautiful world called Prime. The planet had great mountains that breathed fire and heat. This heat fed her people. It kept them strong. But then the hegemony came. They wanted the special fuel ore hidden beneath the mountains. They took everything. They destroyed the thermal vents. They killed the planet. Now they were scattered across the galaxy like dust. Most species hated them. They called them dangerous. They called them monsters. They said could not be trusted. Pulled her knees close to her chest. Inside her body, where a small flame should burn to keep her alive, there was almost nothing left. Just a tiny spark. When that spark died, she would die too. A group of merchants walked past her. There were tall creatures with many tentacles and skin that changed colors based on their mood. Right now, their skin was dark purple, which meant disgust. One of them looked down at and made a sound of hatred. "Look at this disgusting creature," he said to his friends. "Sitting here, making our market look bad. They should have let the whole species die out." His friends laughed. They walked away without looking back. Did not react. She had heard worse, much worse. A few minutes later, a group of eyes stopped near her. They were tall and thin, with hard shells and clicking mandibles. They found entertainment in the suffering of others. One of them pulled out a piece of dried meat. He waved it in front of his face. Her stomach made a painful sound. Her instincts screamed at her to grab it. But the eye threw the meat just out of her reach. When she tried to move toward it, he kicked it further away. His friends clicked their mandibles in laughter. "Hungry little dragon," one of them mocked. "Dance for us and maybe we will feed you." Did not dance. She did not beg. She simply looked at them with her tired eyes until they got bored and left. The day continued. More aliens passed by. Some ignored her. Some looked at her with fear. Some spat in her direction. A syndicate enforcer, a big creature with 4 arms and metal teeth, stopped and told her she had one day to leave the trading district or he would remove her personally. She did not move. Moving required energy. She had none left. The spark inside her grew smaller. Closed her eyes. She thought about her mother, who died in the refugee camps. She thought about her brothers and sisters, her clutchmates, who starved one by one until she was the only one left. She thought about the labor ship that bought her, used her, and then threw her away on this station when she became too weak to work. She was ready to die. It seemed easier than living. Then she heard footsteps stop in front of her. She opened her eyes and saw something strange. A human stood there looking at her. He was not very tall. His skin was brown, his hair was black with some in it, and his eyes were dark and warm. He wore a simple jacket with many pockets. He looked like a spaceship captain, someone who worked hard and traveled far. Humans were considered a minor species in the galaxy. They had only been exploring space for a few hundred years. They were physically weak compared to most aliens. They lived short lives. Many species did not take them seriously. But this human was looking at in a way no one had ever looked at her before. He was not afraid. He was not disgusted. He was not entertained by her suffering. He looked sad and angry, but not at her. Without saying anything, the human knelt down beside her. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small package. It was a thermal ration pack, the kind that soldiers and explorers used. It was designed to give a lot of energy quickly. He opened the package. Heat rose from it, could smell the food, and her whole body shook with desperate hunger. The human held it out to her. "Share a meal with me?" he asked. His voice was quiet and kind. Stared at him, she did not understand. This had never happened before. No one offered food to, no one sat beside them willingly. No one treated them like they mattered. She looked around. The market had gone quiet. The merchants were staring with their tentacles frozen in shock. The eye had stopped clicking. Even the busy shoppers had paused to watch. A human was offering food to a dragon. A human was kneeling beside a creature that everyone else wanted dead. Looked back at the man. Her clawed hands shook as she slowly reached for the ration pack. She waited for him to pull it away, to laugh, to make it a cruel joke like everyone else. He did not pull it away. He simply waited, patient and calm. Her fingers touched the warm package. He let go, letting her take it fully. "Go ahead," he said. "Eat. You need it more than I do." Brought the food to her mouth. The first bite sent warmth flooding through her cold body. The tiny spark inside her grew a little brighter. Tears, hot like fire, ran down her scaled face. The human did not leave. He sat down beside her, right there on the dirty market floor. He pulled out another ration pack for himself and began to eat. He ate with her, like they were equals, like she was a person. "My name is Elias," he said between bites. "Elias Vance. I captain a freighter called the Persistence. What's your name?" For a long moment, could not speak. Her throat was tight with emotions she had forgotten she could feel. Finally, in a voice rough from disuse, she answered. She whispered, "My name is." Elias smiled at her. It was a simple smile, warm and real. "Nice to meet you," he said. "Now eat. There's plenty more where that came from." And for the first time in many years, felt something other than despair. She felt hope. Elias did not rush her. He sat beside on the cold metal floor of the market and let her eat at her own pace. When she finished the first ration pack, he gave her another, then a third. He did not ask for anything in return. He just sat there, eating his own meal like this was the most normal thing in the world. The other aliens in the market continued to stare. Some whispered to each other. A few laughed nervously. Most looked confused. Humans were strange creatures, they said. Humans did not understand how things worked in the galaxy. But Elias did not care about their stares. He only cared about the starving girl in front of him. "Where are you from?" he asked gently. Swallowed her food. Speaking was hard. She had not used her voice much in the past few years. Words felt strange in her mouth. "Prime," she said quietly, "but it is gone now. The hegemony destroyed it." Elias nodded slowly. He had heard of Prime. Everyone had heard of what happened there. It was one of the great tragedies of the galaxy, though most species preferred not to talk about it. "What happened to your family?" he asked. Looked down at her clawed hands. The memories were painful, but something about this human made her want to talk. Maybe it was because he listened. Maybe it was because he did not look at her with hatred or fear. "My mother died in the refugee camps," she said. "There was not enough food, not enough heat. My clutchmates, my brothers and sisters, they died one by one. I watched them all die." Her voice cracked. The flame inside her flickered with old grief. "I was the last one left. A labor ship bought me when I was 12 cycles old. They made me work in the engine rooms. The heat there kept me alive, but just barely. When I got too weak to work, they threw me away here. That was 3 months ago." Elias was quiet for a long moment. His hands had stopped moving. His food sat forgotten in his lap. "You are 17, he said slowly. "You are still a child." Shrugged, "Children die in this galaxy every day. No one cares." "I care," Elias said. She looked at him. His eyes were serious. There was no lie in them, no trick. He meant what he said. Before she could respond, voices called out from across the market. "Captain, there you are." 3 humans walked toward them. pushing through the crowd of starring aliens. They wore the same kind of practical clothing as Elia's, the clothes of people who worked on starships. The first was a woman with black hair and sharp eyes. Her skin was light brown, and she moved like a soldier, always watching for danger. Her name was Diana, and she was the first mate of the Persistence. Behind her came a younger woman with short dark hair and grease stains on her hands. This was the ship's engineer. Her eyes were already studying with curiosity, not fear. The last was a tall man with dark skin and a kind face. Samuel was the ship's medic. He carried a small scanner in his hand, and he was already pointing it at before he even reached them. "Captain, we have been looking everywhere for you," Diana said. Then she stopped and looked at. Her eyebrows rose slightly, but she did not seem shocked. "I see you found a friend." "This is," Elia said simply. "She needs help." Samuel looked at his scanner and frowned deeply. "She needs more than help. These readings are terrible. She is severely malnourished. Her internal temperature is dangerously low. I am surprised she is still alive." Was already thinking. Need thermal energy to survive, right? I can modify one of the cargo bays, create a heating system. It would not be hard. Diana looked at Elias with a knowing expression. She had worked with him for many years. She knew how he thought. She knew what he was going to say before he said it. "She coming with us, Captain?" Diana asked. Elias looked at. "If she wants to, no obligations, no debt, just an offer. We have room on our ship, we have food, we have heat. You can stay as long as you need." Stared at him. Her mind could not understand what was happening. This did not make sense. People did not help. People did not offer them homes. This had to be a trick. It had to be. "Why?" she asked. "Why would you help me? You do not know me. I am nothing to you." Elias smiled sadly. "You are a child who was abandoned to starve. That is enough reason for me." A loud voice interrupted them. "You are making a mistake, human." The merchant from earlier pushed forward through the crowd. His skin was now red with anger and something else. Fear, maybe, or hatred. "Are dangerous," the merchant said. "They are violent by nature. They cannot be trusted. You bring this creature onto your ship and she will kill you in your sleep. It is in their blood." Several aliens in the crowd nodded in agreement. They whispered about savagery, about the fires they could breathe, about the claws that could tear through metal. Felt shame burn inside her. She wanted to disappear. She wanted to tell Elias that the merchant was right, that he should leave her here and forget about her. She was dangerous. She was a monster. Everyone said so. But before she could speak, Elias stood up. He was not a tall man. He was not physically impressive. Compared to the merchant, he looked small and weak. But something in his eyes made the merchant take a step back. "She is a child," Elias said. His voice was quiet, but it carried across the silent market. "A child who was stolen from her home, sold into slavery and thrown away like garbage. And you watched her starve. You mocked her. You treated her like an animal." He took a step toward the merchant. Took another step back. "Do not lecture me about trust," Elias continued. "Do not tell me who is dangerous and who is not. I have seen what cruelty looks like, and it is not her." He pointed at the crowd of aliens who had watched suffer for months. "It is you, all of you." The market was completely silent now. No one moved. No one spoke. Elias turned back to and held out his hand. "Come with us," he said. "If you want, the choice is yours. It will always be yours." Looked at his hand. It was just a human hand. Small and soft with no claws, no scales. It should have looked weak. But to her in that moment it looked like the strongest thing in the galaxy. She reached out and took it. Her clawed hand in his human hand. Two species that should have had nothing in common. But somehow in that moment they understood each other perfectly. "Okay," she whispered, "I will come with you." Elias helped her stand. Samuel immediately moved to support her other side. was already talking about thermal configurations and energy requirements. Diana walked ahead, clearing a path through the crowd with just her stare. As they walked toward the docking bay where the Persistence waited, felt the tiny flame inside her chest grow brighter. For the first time in years, she was not alone. The Persistence was not a beautiful ship. It was old and worn, with scratches on its hull and patches where repairs had been made many times. The paint was faded. The engines made strange noises, but too, it was the most wonderful thing she had ever seen. It was warm, had worked through the night to convert an empty cargo bay into a living space for. She had installed heating panels along the walls and floor. She had created a thermal nest where could rest and absorb the heat she needed to survive. The temperature in that room was hot enough to make humans sweat, but it felt like home. The first few days were strange. Did not know how to act around people who were kind to her. When Samuel brought her special food designed to rebuild her strength, she waited for him to demand payment. He never did. When Diana showed her around the ship, explaining where everything was, kept waiting for the trick to reveal itself. It never came. She ate 5 meals a day. Samuel monitored her health constantly, watching her internal temperature rise back to normal levels. Her scales slowly regained their color. Blue and purple began to shine through the dull. Her wings grew stronger. But healing the body was easier than healing the mind. The first time dropped a metal tool on the floor, the loud noise made react on instinct. Fire erupted from her mouth. She burned a hole in the wall before she could stop herself. She fell to the floor, shaking, waiting for punishment, waiting for them to throw her out. She had shown them how dangerous she was. Now they would abandon her like everyone else. But just looked at the burned wall and smiled. "Good thing I needed to replace that panel anyway," she said. "Are you okay? That sound scared you, did it not?" Stared at her. "You are not angry." Angry? No. Accidents happen, especially when someone has been through hard times. The wall can be fixed. What matters is that you are okay. Helped her stand up and offered her a cup of warm liquid that humans called tea. Held it in her clawed hands, feeling the warmth spread through her fingers. That night she could not sleep. The nightmares came as they always did. She saw her mother dying. She saw her clutchmates turning cold and still. She saw the labor ship, the chains, the endless work in the burning engine rooms. She woke up screaming, flames pouring from her throat. When her vision cleared, she saw Elias sitting beside her nest. He had pulled a chair into her room and was just sitting there, calm and patient, waiting for her to come back to reality. "Bad dreams?" he asked softly. Nodded, her whole body was shaking. "They will get better," Elias said. "Not quickly, not easily, but they will get better, I promise." "How do you know?" she asked. "Because I have had them too. When I was young, I was in a war. I saw terrible things. For years, I could not close my eyes without seeing them again. But I had people who helped me, people who sat with me during the dark nights, people who reminded me that I was not alone." He smiled gently. "Now I do the same for others. That is how it works. We help each other." From that night on, the crew took turns sitting with when the nightmares came. Sometimes it was Elias. Sometimes it was Samuel, who would tell her stories about Earth, the human. Sometimes it was Diana, who did not say much but whose presence was steady and strong. Sometimes it was, who would show her engine schematics and explain how things worked, giving her mind something to focus on besides the darkness. Slowly, began to understand something about humans. They were not strong in the way other species were strong. They could not fight like the four-armed. They could not survive in space like the vacuum-breathing. They could not live for thousands of years like the ancient. But they had a different kind of strength. They bonded. They connected. They found creatures who were broken and lost, and they refused to give up on them. Samuel told her about Earth's history one evening. He spoke of terrible wars and great cruelties that humans had done to each other. But he also spoke of how they had built hospitals in the middle of battlefields, how they had created organizations to help strangers on the other side of the planet, how they adopted animals that could not survive on their own, loving them even though those animals would die long before the humans would. "We are a species that runs into burning buildings to save people we have never met," Samuel said. "It does not always make sense, but it is who we are." Thought about this for a long time. Diana began to train her in combat. At first, was surprised. She had always been told that her fire, her claws, her natural weapons made her a monster, but Diana saw them differently. "These are tools," Diana said, holding up a plasma rifle. "This is also a tool. Tools are not good or evil. It is how you use them that matters. You can use your fire to hurt innocent people, or you can use it to protect people you love. The choice is yours." Trained hard, she learned to control her flames, to aim them precisely. She learned to fight with her claws and her tail. She learned to move quickly and quietly. Diana discovered that was a natural fighter. Her instincts were sharp. Her reactions were fast. But more than that, she had a fierce desire to protect. When they ran combat simulations, always positioned herself between the imaginary enemies and her imaginary allies. "You have good instincts," Diana said approvingly. "You fight to protect, not to destroy." Elias taught her about navigation. He showed her star charts and trade routes. He explained how to read sensor data and how to plot courses through dangerous space. To everyone's surprise, had a gift for it. She could look at a map of stars and understand the patterns almost immediately. "You are a natural navigator," Elias said. "If you want, you could have a real job on this ship, not as charity, as a crew member." Felt something warm bloom in her chest that had nothing to do with her internal flame. "I would like that," she said. Weeks passed, grew stronger, healthier, more confident. The dull disappeared completely from her scales. Her wings stretched out wide and powerful. Her eyes burned bright amber again. She began to smile. She began to laugh. She began to feel like a person again. And then, one day, the syndicate came. The Persistence was traveling through a quiet sector of space when a massive cruiser appeared on their sensors. It was 3 times their size, bristling with weapons. Its markings showed it belonged to the Syndicate, the criminal organization that controlled much of the galaxy's illegal trade. A message came through the communication system. "Freighter Persistence, this is Al of the Syndicate. You have something that belongs to me. Prepare to be boarded." Blood went cold. She knew that name. Al was the crime lord who owned the labor ship that had bought her years ago. Technically, she was still listed as his property in the Syndicate's records. He had come to take her back. The warm feeling in her chest turned to ice. She looked at her human crew, the people who had saved her, healed her, loved her. And she made a decision. She would not let anyone take her from them. She would fight. She would die if she had to. But she would not abandon her family. The Syndicate cruiser locked onto the Persistence with magnetic clamps. There was no escape. The smaller freighter could not break free from such a powerful ship. Running was not an option. Elias gathered his crew in the main cargo bay. The 4 humans stood together, checking their weapons and preparing for the fight that was coming. Their faces were calm, but their eyes were hard. Stood apart from them, her wings pressed tight against her back. Guilt burned in her stomach like poison. "This is my fault," she said. "If I leave with them, they will let you go. You do not have to fight. You do not have to risk your lives for me." Elias looked at her. His expression was patient but firm. "Do you remember what I said when we first met?" She nodded slowly. "You said no obligations, no debt." "That is right, and I meant it. You owe us nothing. But that goes both ways. We do not help you because we have to. We help you because we want to, because you are part of this crew now. You are family." Diana loaded her rifle with a sharp click. "Besides, I have been waiting for a good fight. The syndicate thinks they can push people around because they are big and scary. Time to remind them that size is not everything. Held up a device that sparked with electricity. I made some upgrades to our defensive systems. They are going to have a few surprises. Samuel pulled out a medical kit and strapped it to his belt. And someone needs to patch you all up when this is over. I am not letting some syndicate thugs make me lose patience. Felt tears prick at her eyes. She had spent so long believing that no one would ever fight for her, that she was worthless, that she was alone. These humans proved her wrong every single day. The cargo bay door groaned as the syndicate cutting tools began to slice through. Sparks flew from the metal. The sound was loud and terrible. Positions, Elias said calmly. The crew spread out across the cargo bay, taking cover behind crates and equipment. Moved to stand beside Elias, her claws extended, flames flickering at the back of her throat. Elias said quietly, "Whatever happens, I want you to know something. That day in the market when I knelt beside you, it was the best decision I ever made." Before she could respond, the cargo door exploded inward. Syndicate soldiers poured into the bay. They were a mix of species, all of them large and heavily armed. Behind them came Al himself. The crime lord was even more impressive in person. His tentacles were thick and powerful, covered in golden rings that showed his wealth. His skin shifted colors rapidly, showing his confidence and amusement. He looked at the small group of humans and the single dragon girl with a smile that showed too many teeth. "Captain Vance," Al said, "I have heard about you. The human who picked up my lost property on Nexus 7. Very noble, very stupid." He gestured at the soldiers around him. There were at least 15 of them, all armed with plasma rifles. "You are outnumbered. This does not need to end in violence. Simply return what belongs to me and I will let you go. Maybe I will even pay you for your trouble." Elias did not move. "She is not property, she is a person, and she is crew." Al laughed. "Crew, she is a beast, an animal. I bought her legally. I have the documents. In the eyes of galactic law, she belongs to me." "Galactic law is wrong," Diana said. "Would not be the first time." The crime lord's amusement began to fade. His skin shifted to a darker color, showing his irritation. "You are 5 people against my entire ship. What do you possibly think you can do?" Elias smiled. It was not a friendly smile. "Here is a better question," he said. "What are we willing to do? For her, for each other? Because I promise you, Al, you have never met people who are willing to do what we are willing to do." Al studied him for a long moment. Then he shrugged his tentacles. "Kill them, bring the dragon to me alive." The soldiers raised their weapons. Everything happened at once. Triggered her surprise. The cargo bay lights exploded in a blinding flash that stunned the syndicate soldiers. At the same moment, hidden panels in the floor opened up, releasing clouds of smoke that filled the room. Diana opened fire. Her shots were precise and deadly. 2 soldiers fell before they even knew what was happening. Samuel moved through the smoke like a ghost, using a stun baton to drop enemies quietly. He was a medic, trained to save lives, but he had also trained to protect them. Elias fought with a pistol and a knife, moving between cover and striking fast. He was not the strongest or the fastest, but he was smart and experienced. Every shot counted. And became fire. She had spent weeks learning control, learning to aim, learning to fight not like a monster but like a warrior. Now all of that training came together. Her flames roared through the smoke, targeting soldiers with precision. Her claws slashed through armor that was not designed to resist strength. Her wings carried her above the battle, letting her strike from angles the enemies could not predict. She was not fighting for survival. She was fighting for something more. She was fighting for the people who had saved her, for the people who had believed in her, for her family. The battle was brutal and desperate. The Syndicate soldiers had numbers and weapons, but the crew of the Persistence had something else. They had each other. They moved together like parts of one machine, covering each other, protecting each other. Samuel took a hit to his arm but kept fighting. Diana got knocked down but rolled back to her feet and kept shooting. Set off more surprises, traps she had hidden throughout the ship. Elias faced 3 soldiers at once. One of them hit him hard, sending him crashing against a wall. Saw him fall. She saw the soldier raise a weapon to finish him. Something inside her broke free. She crossed the cargo bay in a heartbeat. Her flames consumed the soldier before he could fire. The other 2 turned to face her, but they were too slow. She was fury. She was fire. She was everything they had tried to destroy, and she would not be destroyed. "These are my people," she roared, and her voice shook the walls of the ship. "You will not take them from me." The remaining soldiers looked at the burning dragon girl, at the fallen bodies of their allies, and they ran. They ran back toward the cruiser as fast as they could. Only Al remained. The crime lord's skin had turned pale with fear. His tentacles trembled. He tried to back away, but Diana appeared behind him, pressing her rifle against his head. "Going somewhere?" she asked calmly. Elias limped forward, supported by Samuel. He was hurt but alive. They were all hurt but alive. "Here is what is going to happen," Elias said to Al. "You are going to delete all records from your systems. You are going to leave this sector and never come back. And you are going to send a message to the rest of the Syndicate that the crew of the Persistence is not to be touched. Ever." Al's tentacles writhed with rage and humiliation. "You cannot do this. I am a Syndicate lord. I have connections. I have power." "You have nothing," said. She stepped forward, flames still dancing around her claws. "You have nothing but fear, and we are not afraid of you." The crime lord looked at the dragon girl who he had once considered worthless property. He looked at the small group of humans who had defeated his soldiers. And for the first time in his long life, Al understood that he had made a terrible mistake. He had underestimated what love could do. An hour later, the Syndicate cruiser limped away with its tail between its legs. Al was in restraints, his crimes being broadcast across the sector thanks to a signal that had rigged. The crew of the Persistence gathered in the cargo bay, surrounded by scorch marks and debris. They were wounded and exhausted, but they were smiling. Elias looked at. "Nice speech back there," he said, "about us being your people." Felt her scales flush with embarrassment. "I meant it." "I know," Elias said, "we all know." And in that moment, surrounded by the wreckage of their victory, the crew of the Persistence was whole. 1 year had passed since the battle with Al. The galaxy had changed in small ways. News of what happened aboard the Persistence had spread far and wide. A small human freighter had defeated a Syndicate cruiser. A young refugee had stood beside them and fought. The story was told in trading posts and space stations across dozens of sectors. People began to look at differently, not with fear and hatred, but with curiosity. Some even looked at them with respect. Humans, strange as they were, had started something. They called it the Relocation Initiative. Human organizations began actively seeking out refugees, offering them homes and jobs and a chance to rebuild their lives. It was not charity, the humans insisted. It was just what decent people did. The Persistence had become part of this effort. Elias and his crew traveled the galaxy, finding lost and connecting them with humans who wanted to help. They had saved dozens of refugees in the past year. Some stayed with them for a while before moving on. Some joined the crew permanently. Was no longer the scared, starving girl who had sat in the market waiting to die. She was the navigator of the Persistence, one of the best in the sector. Her scales shone bright blue and purple. Her wings were strong and powerful. Her flames burned hotter than ever. But today, she was not on the ship. She was standing in a great hall on the planet's secondary, facing the newly formed council. The council was made up of survivors from across the galaxy. Old and young, they had come together to try to rebuild their broken culture. They needed leaders. They needed symbols of hope. They had asked to be one of those symbols. The head of the council, an ancient named, looked down at her from his seat. "Of the persistence," he said formally. "You have become known throughout the galaxy, the dragon who fought beside humans, the dragon who refused to give up. Our people need figures like you. We want to name you a voice of the council, a leader, a symbol of strength." The hall was silent, waiting for her answer. Looked at the faces around her. She saw hope in their eyes. She saw desperation. She saw people who had lost everything and were searching for something to believe in. She understood she had been one of them. But she knew she was not what they needed. "I am honored," she said, her voice strong and clear, "but I must decline." Murmurs rippled through the hall, leaned forward surprised. "May I ask why?" Stepped forward. "Because I am not your symbol. I am not a leader or a voice. I am a freighter navigator who got lucky. Lucky that one day a human chose to see me when everyone else looked away. Lucky that he offered to share his meal with me. Lucky that his crew took me in and treated me like family." She looked around the hall, meeting the eyes of everyone she could see. "If you want to honor me, then honor them. Honor the humans who reached out when they did not have to. Honor every species, every person who chooses compassion over convenience. Build a future where no child of any species has to beg in the cold, where no one is left to starve while others watch and laugh." She paused, feeling the weight of her words. "Do not make me a symbol. Make kindness your symbol. Make hope your symbol. That is what saved me. That is what will save all of us." The hall was silent for a long moment, then slowly nodded his great head. "You are wise beyond your years, young one," he said. "Perhaps that is exactly why you would make a good leader." Smiled, "Maybe someday. But for now, I have a ship to navigate and a crew to take care of." She bowed respectfully to the council and walked out of the hall. The Persistence was waiting for her at the landing platform. It looked the same as always, old and worn and patched together. But too, it was the most beautiful sight in the galaxy. She walked up the ramp and found Elias sitting in the cargo bay. He was drinking a cup of tea and looking at the stars through the viewport. "How did it go?" he asked. "They wanted to make me a leader," said, sitting down next to him. "A symbol for our people. And I said no." Elias raised an eyebrow. "Really? That sounds like a big opportunity." Shrugged, "Maybe, but I already have everything I need right here." She looked around the cargo bay. She could hear singing off-key in the engine room. Samuel was in the medical bay, organizing supplies and humming to himself. Diana was on the bridge, running system checks with her usual focused expression. Her family, her home. "Believe in hordes," said quietly. "Treasure that we gather and guard and love above all else. Our ancestors hoarded gold, jewels, precious artifacts. They believed that the size of your hoard showed your worth." Elias nodded, listening. "But I do not care about gold," continued. "My hoard is not made of metal or gems." She looked at him, her amber eyes bright with emotion. "My hoard is this, all of you. Humans who knelt beside a starving dragon and offered to share a meal. Humans who fought beside me and bled for me. Humans who taught me that I was not a monster, that I was worth saving." She reached out and took his hand, her clawed fingers wrapping gently around his soft human ones. "You are my treasure, Elias. You and Samuel and Diana, this ship, this life. This is my hoard and I will guard it until my last flame goes out." Elias squeezed her hand. His eyes were suspiciously bright. "Then we are even," he said, "because you are ours too. From the moment you took that ration pack from my hand, you became part of us, and humans do not let go of their people, ever." They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the stars drift by. Somewhere across the galaxy, Other species were beginning to understand something important. The measure of a civilization was not found in its technology or its weapons or its conquests. It was found in how it treated those who could not help themselves, in the kindness it showed to strangers, in the hands it extended to those who had been forgotten. Humans were strange creatures. They were small and weak and lived such short lives, but they had a gift that many older and more powerful species had lost. They could look at someone who was broken and lost and see not a burden but a friend, a family member, a treasure worth protecting. The Persistence flew on through the endless darkness of space. Inside, a crew of misfits and survivors shared meals and stories and laughter. A dragon girl who had once been abandoned to die now stood at the navigation console, plotting a course to the next adventure. She was not alone anymore. She would never be alone again. And in the warmth of the ship she called home, surrounded by the humans she loved. His flame burned brighter than ever before. Not because she had to survive anymore, but because she had something worth living for.